You know, the hardest battles you'll ever fight is the battle against the version of yourself you've become way too comfortable with. And I think one of the most difficult things in life is learning how to truly overcome yourself. Whether it's addiction, whether it's laziness or scrolling endlessly, or you just have that lack of motivation. I go through that as well. Or just bad habits, or you're constantly thinking negative of yourself, or you just simply feel stuck, because I sometimes feel stuck as well. Overcoming those things are difficult. And honestly, for myself, I'm still learning. I'm still going through that process myself. But after years of fighting certain addictions in my life and struggling with certain things internally, I've learned a lot of what actually helps someone change. And I feel like it's important to talk about this because a lot of people are silently battling through things that nobody sees. And I know that I'm going through something and I don't even like to talk about it. I know there's people out there that are struggling the same type of problems that I'm struggling with. And most people never even get there. Most people don't even talk about these things. And I feel like before you truly want to overcome this thing, you have to have a full realization that you actually have a problem in the first place. And most people never even get there. A lot of people think that it's impossible. A lot of people make it feel acceptable. They say things like, it is what it is, or everybody does it, or that's just who I am. But deep down, they know that it's destroying themselves. And you can't truly heal something that you continually justify for. And once you fully realize, okay, you know, this thing right here is truly affecting my life. This is chaining me down. This thing right here is actually holding me back from what I'm truly trying to become. Then that's when the true journey really starts. Because overcoming something isn't just physically, it's a mental work. And you have to understand that if you've been conditioned for this for years, you're fighting this condition for years now. And what I mean about it is, if you have an addiction or a bad habit, like for me, for instance, I've been having a bad habit for a decade now. For a decade. Then I'm finding a decade version of myself that has been reinforced every single day. And of course, it's not easy. But one of the biggest things that I've learned is that your mind is unbelievably powerful. Your mindset dictates almost everything in your life. It affects your health. It affects your discipline, your confidence, your action, your future. And most people don't really realize how much power their thoughts truly have. That's why I always say your mind grows whatever you constantly feed. And that applies your success, but it also applies towards the addictions that we have within ourselves. A lot of people use visualizations for money, for success, for cars, for business, for goals. But you can also use that exact principle to overcoming the things that is destroying in your life. You can visualize yourself becoming healthier, more disciplined, more confident, more focused, free from those addictions that you have, free from those old version of yourself. And one of the biggest shifts that I learned was to stop identifying with the addictions itself. Instead of consistently saying that I'm addicted, that I can't stop, that this is just who I am, I start to see myself as the person who has already changed, even during the process, even during the setbacks, even during those relapses, because your brain starts to listen to the identity that you start to constantly repeat yourself into yourself. And eventually your actions start to align with that identity. And one thing that I highly recommend doing is writing everything down. Write down the addictions, the habits, the pains, how it's affecting your life, how it's making you feel, what it's taking away from you. And eventually when you start putting those emotions into a piece of paper and you're writing everything down and you're actually sitting there and you're putting emotions to it, what I want you to do after that, underneath that, write down the version of yourself that has already overcome it, that has overcame those problems. Write with gratitude, write with belief, write with like you're finally free from that addiction. And after that, let it go. Fold that piece of paper, throw it away. I don't give a damn what you do. Hide it. Forget about it. Stop over obsessing yourself from it, because that's where most people mess up from it. They plant the seed over there and they constantly start to dig it and go back to see if it's even growing. Growth doesn't work like that. When you plant something and you're watering it, and you have to give it time. Your mind works the same way. When you're watering something, through visualizing yourself, through repetition, seeing yourself that you've already overcame that, through corrections, through your thoughts, through seeing yourself becoming that better version of yourself, especially during the moments where you're struggling the most, when you relapse, those are the most important parts. Those are the parts where you're seeing yourself. That's where you need to just refortify that, and then letting it go. Especially during the moments where you're struggling the most, when you have to take a step back, because most people only try to think positively when life feels easy. No, the real growth, the real transformation happens during the difficult moments, through the temptations, when it hits, through the negative thoughts, through the times when you feel weak. That's when you visualize yourself overcoming those things. That's when you redirect your mind into seeing yourself of, hey, I've overcame this thing. I've always compared it into the bowling alley, the little, the guardrails. I've always compared myself with that, with visualizing yourself. Every time your thoughts start to drift towards that old version of yourself, you redirect that back towards the person you're trying to become again and again. And eventually those mental barriers, those guards, eventually become strong enough to deflect that. And eventually those old patterns starts to lose its power. And trust me, it's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen instantly, but slowly. And that's the part where people struggle with time after time. You need to understand that everybody wants to have that change instantly. I need to heal now. I need to be successful now. I need to quit this now. But real transformation only happens through the process. And honestly, the process is the most beautiful thing, because one day you'll look back and you'll realize the person you were becoming was being built this whole entire time, even through the failures, even through the setbacks. One of the things that also have changed my perspective was understanding that something, it's called the observer effect. And this is a scientific idea that is particularly where it's like the idea of the behavior only differentially changes based on what you're observing. And in a weird way, life is similar with that. When you're constantly observing, when you're constantly thinking about, what you're constantly focusing on starts to become stronger in your reality. And I'm gonna tell you this, man, that's the same thing that you're doing with your addictions. That's why you have to become aware of your thoughts, because sometimes the smallest thought grows into the biggest habit, especially when those thoughts have been reinforced for years. But you see, that's the beautiful thing, is that you can, if that addiction, if you grew something that became a bad habit, you can reprogram that into something beautiful. And you can slowly start to increment these positive things, and eventually you'll slowly suffocate that old version of yourself by consistently feeding energy into the new one. And over time, that new version of yourself becomes stronger than the old one. That's exactly what happens in my life. I used to be lazy. Now I'm constantly working towards something. I might not be posting every single day, but I'm constantly starting to do it. I used to avoid to the gym. Now I'm going consistently. I used to doubt myself. Now I believe my future. And none of that shit happened overnight. I started with my thoughts. I visualize, I believe. Consistency is key, my brothers. I'm telling you, if you're not doing it every single day, it's not going to happen. But everything, you need to understand that everything around you starts as an idea in someone's mind. Everything that you see right here, whether it's the house, whether it's the pool, whether it's the cars, the business, the technology, it all started from the mind. Nothing existed without the imagination first. So if the mind can create success, if the mind created this house, created this pool, created this shirt, then your mind can create that version of yourself that you're trying to be. It can create that discipline. It can create that peace, that freedom. But you have to understand that your mind grows whatever you feed, whether it's poison or fruitfulness, it does not matter. And so that's why you need to be aware of your thoughts. It's so important. And, another thing to talk about seriously is that if you have someone that you can trust, that you can open up to, a lot of people suffer in silence because they feel ashamed of what they're doing, of, people might think that they will say something negatively, but I'm speaking about, but just, you know what, no, I'm gonna say this, but speaking about your struggles, you talking to someone, you telling someone about this, and I've never had that. I wasn't able to talk about these things, and it was hard within my life. Luckily, I've been meeting new friends and new people that are kind of aligned with my life that have been helping me. But those things alone create accountability, and it makes you feel real. It makes you feel like you can overcome these battles. It makes you heal and feel like it's possible, especially if you're able to talk to someone that you can trust. And the most importantly is, I want to also let everybody know that you're not alone. That at the end of the day, I'm still on the same journey myself. I'm still battling things. I'm still struggling. I'm still catching myself into old patterns. But I also know that I'm becoming better every single day. And that's the most important part of the thing is progress. Even if it's small, even if yesterday was bad, but today was slightly better, that matters most, because every small shift is building the future version of yourself that you're trying to become. And eventually, if you stay consistent, that old version of yourself will start to fade away. So if you're struggling with something right now, and maybe you don't have someone, understand this. You're not going to be trapped forever. You're not going to have this addiction for the rest of your life. You're not going to have these bad habits. You are not your past. You are simply in the middle of becoming someone new. And if you keep feeding the right thoughts, the right energy, and the right versions of yourself in that mind, eventually your reality will begin to reflect itself. So trust the process, trust the timing, and most importantly, don't stop believing that you can actually change.